Let's now talk about a couple of questions were asked about these Department of Homeland Security memos that were released today. This is guidance on enforcement of immigration laws by the Trump administration. And in essence, according to this call with reporters, that they're reaffirming there will be no mass deportation. Leila Santiago, let me bring you in Mexico, no mass deportation, reaffirming a lot of this is, just in accordance of policies that have been in place that predates the Trump administration. And a key piece of this is, DACA, or the Dreamer program, will stay intact.
And Brooke, we're actually not getting much reaction from government officials here when it comes to the president's office or the office of the foreign minister. But I did talk to one Mexican senator who said, look, the way I see this, he is hardening his stance. He is becoming more aggressive when it comes to immigration. And he's doing this because of some of the legal challenges, some of the legal hurdles that he has faced with these executive orders. And one of the interesting things is some people here see this as a crackdown on immigration. We were on the border just a few days ago. I spoke to people who had plans to cross the border, the U.S.-Mexico border, illegally. And I want you to hear, even after these executive orders have been signed, I want you to hear what they told me. Entonces, el muro,
él no nos va a detener.
He's saying that a border wall would not stop him from going back.
O sea, Donald Trump puede poner 4 o 5 muros.
He's saying Donald Trump can put 4 or 5 walls.
Eso no va a detener la migración.
And that won't keep him from migrating up to the U.S.
Nosotros vamos a buscar la manera de cómo llegar con nuestras familias.
Because he wants to find a way to be with his family. And his name was Moises. He was in Tijuana, and his family is in New Jersey. You heard it, Brooke. A wall, 5 walls, isn't going to stop him because the bond with his family, he says, is stronger. He has, by the way, been deported 3 times, once under the Obama administration, twice under the Trump administration, and he was one of several we talked to about that very same issue. So while the Trump administration may be having a stricter policy or certainly taking a stance on immigration, I'm not sure that it's reaching everyone wanting to cross that border illegally.
I'm so glad you talked to him. We should be hearing from these voices. Leila, thank you. Gil Kerlikowski, who once led Customs and Border Protection. I mean, you're familiar with this memo that went out today. Again, Sean Spicer reaffirming, listen, this is about criminals. This is about priorities. I think he even said, essentially that the president has a big heart when it comes to these specific issues. What did you hear? What jumps out at you from this DHS memo?
Well, there are a couple things. One is that trying to get state and local law enforcement to become immigration enforcers is difficult. That has been tried for well over a decade in 2 administrations. There are 17,000 local police departments. There are only a handful that engage in this. And one reason, of course, is they're pretty busy already enforcing state and local laws. Number 2, they want to make sure that they don't put their departments, they have a fiduciary responsibility as a chief and a sheriff, not to put their departments in the middle of a lot of protracted and expensive civil litigation involving racial profiling. And lastly, they don't want to have the chilling effect on the people that they are sworn, that they took an oath to protect. They need their cooperation. Quite frankly, they need the trust of the people.
The trust of the people, and again, on this phone call with DHS, with the White House and these reporters, again, with Sean Spicer trying to reassure, there is no imminent mass deportation. The priority is, getting them in and women out with criminal backgrounds. And again, reaffirming that the Dreamers are safe. On catch and release, just quickly, Gil, the memo says catch and release will end. Is that a change?
No, it's not really a change. You can only hold people that have come into the country illegally, crossed illegally, for so long before either a federal judge is going to tell you they have to be released. Now, when I left office on January 20th, there were well over 40,000 people in detention. So you only have so much room at the inn, and so you're going to have to release people. Or the surge that sounded pretty positive in all of this is to have significantly more immigration judges that will hold those hearings in a timely manner and make that decision so that whether the person is returned or whether they're granted some type of protection, that can be made.
What about Laura Coates just bringing in a legal brain here, just even the constitutionality of this, constitutionality of detaining people?
Well, the biggest problem that you have with these new orders, of course, is the amount of discretion that is given to these ICE officers to not only decide who is now a priority, but who is suspected of a crime. Remember, the priority is people who have a criminal background. But these orders allow for the officers to decide whether or not somebody should be charged with a crime, thereby moving them to the front of the line as a priority. And that has dramatic implications on due process issues and the like. And remember, just today, the Supreme Court is hearing a case about the rights of people who are within the jurisdiction of the United States, albeit at the border, of a man named Sergio Hernandez. And they are facing the very similar issues of what kind of rights do we extend to people who are either along the border or in our country under our jurisdiction. So really the biggest hurdle they will always face legally with these challenges is that when you give discretion to an agency to decide whether or not somebody is suspected of a crime, thereby making them equate to a criminal, you're going to have constitutional issues, and that is not going to go away by these new bans. And unlike what happened in the previous two administrations, where you dealt with the backlog of people who were on these immigration courts being released back to their families, now you will continue to have a backlog not only of those people, but those who are even suspected of a crime.
So I think we should be crystal clear, though. You have DHS memos, but then you also have this executive order. I know you mentioned the ban. I just don't want to conflate the two. I think that was Gloria's voice who wanted to jump in. Gloria, was that you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. According to Sean Spicer, they're moving along parallel tracks, and that was a little confusing. They're still defending. They're still defending the ban in court.
Right.
This order is moving along a parallel track. But I think what's most interesting here to me is that Sean Spicer said everybody here legally is subject to removal. Okay, so we know that. He said dreamers, not for now. He just answered that in a way where that could be reopened, but not for now. I think the question is, and of course, he said there has to be a system of priority. What's a system of priority? People who are convicted of a crime. My question is, what's a crime? Are there different levels of crime? Is it getting stopped for a traffic ticket? Is it tax evasion? Is it a criminal act? And are the crimes put in different order? Okay, and we don't know the answer to that right now. So if you're here illegally, and say you're the parent of a dreamer, and you get stopped for a traffic ticket,
does that mean you're kicked out? Right.
Could be.
No, just to be clear, I 100% agree with you, Gloria, and that's really the question people have. And if I said ban, it was inadvertent. My discussion is with respect to the deportation orders. Remember, my issue is if you have discretion given to the ICE officers to decide what even is a crime, you're going to have not only a backlog, but people who should not be included in that. And yes, perhaps being in the country is illegal in and of itself, but the discretion that's given to the ICE officers now gives an enormous amount of power and room to abuse that power and victimize people who otherwise would not be in that fold. And that's one of the biggest issues of these orders, and why you're going to have not only more ICE officers, but more ICE judges to decide whether or not people are able to, are being treated fairly. Because remember, if you're in the jurisdiction of the United States, you do, in fact, have some rights, and those have to be honored.
David Katniss, I just want to end with you, and maybe on a bigger. Actually, I want to go to David. Just quick, final, big picture question. He now has this new national security advisor. You've got this new executive order rollout at some point this week. CPAC's in town. Final thought from you on all of this.
I think immigration is going to drive the week again once these executive orders, once they're dropped, because the biggest takeaway from Spicer's briefing today is the huge amount of wiggle room on immigration that he's leaving. It looks like Trump wants to go against one of his campaign pledges, which was to rescind DACA. He said he wanted to get rid of executive amnesty by the Obama administrations. One of those dealt with children who came here, were brought here illegally. It looks like Trump wants to move away from that, but not completely, because Spicer is saying we're going to prioritize this. So a lot of wiggle room. We'll see if CPAC that there's any conservatives that are getting upset that Trump hasn't done what he promised on DACA, on the immigration front.
Remember, it was Trump himself, President Trump himself, last week said we're going to deal with DACA with heart. Great point, though. We'll look ahead at CPAC as well. Thank you all so much here.